Okay, other questions? Gary?
What can you say more or less in detail on what Waltz has done for the veterans? You know, itemize maybe a little bit, 4 or 5 things or whatever.
You know, Gary, you're great. It's about 1 in 10 meetings that I will get a question that I can't give a real detailed answer to, and you nailed it. Okay. So well, I can't, but go ahead.
I just hear my Legion friends say, well, he's a good guy because he gets the...
Yeah, and he sends out all what are really campaign flyers at taxpayer expense, making the case that he's done all this for veterans. I'll just say this, the perception is very strong. And so the way I intend to deal with that is, as I've suggested, that, okay, that's fine, you can get veterans benefits, but when this is the picture, doesn't matter what the law says. If you don't have the money, you know, if you don't have the money, forget it. Now, let me just add to that what I said to my friends at Farm Fest 2 years ago, and what I'm going to say to them again today, all right? And I was at the panel 2 years ago, Farm Bureau, Farmers Union, cattle growers, hog producers, and I know I'm talking to a lot of you here. And I'm a member of Farm Bureau, and I'm not a critic of Farm Bureau, but I was at the panel, and every member of the panel came before the people there and talked about how we could protect, I'm going to say protect our share of the federal dollar. Every member of the panel did that, and I found the discussion to be very uninspiring. All right. And so I went to the mic in my usual way. I'm very much of a free spirit. I'm not, you know, I'm not inhibited in any way, as you might guess. And I asked this question. I said, look, and I knew every one of the panelists, everyone. Talked to all of them by name. Look, what you're saying here is we need to be concerned about how, it's like we're on a big train. And every group here owns one car on this huge train, and we're talking about how we're going to protect our car on the train. The problem is, the train is going over a cliff. And what good does it do us to have a car and a train that's going over a cliff? That was my question. What good does it do us? And I'm going to ask the same question this year. And all the people I knew sat there with this deer in the headlights look. And nobody would touch that question with a 10-foot pole. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the question. This is the question. It's number one, is we have to get our financial house in order. Before we look at before we have any spending bill, we have to set the limits, and we have to be sane. We have to be real world. We have to be good stewards in how we run the shop. Yes, sir. Greg, yeah, Greg, go first. Go ahead.
What do you think of Paul Ryan? His plans to trim the deficit? Is he going far enough, fast enough?
No. Next question. Just let me comment just a little bit. Paul Ryan has really led the charge in the House Budget Committee. I happen to have the highest regard for Paul Ryan. And I think that he has gone as far as what I'm going to say the Republican establishment can tolerate. But we need to know that his plan to balance the budget balances it, if my memory is correct, in 1941. Or excuse me, 2041. I mean, I think it's 20, what, how many, 20, it's in the 20s anyway, years in the future. I think predicting budgets that far in the future is kind of like predicting the weather that far in the future. So I don't think it goes far enough. In all fairness to Congressman Ryan, I think after the election he's going to scale that back. And I think he feels he's gone as far as he can under the circumstances. And it is my hope, and I'll try to influence him in that direction, let's balance in 5 years. We can't be 20 years in the future. But he's on the right track.
If you plan for 20, you might not need it.
I agree. So, but I think he's on the right track. But let's, you know, let's accelerate that. Now, let me add too that I think it's quite clear that Congressman Ryan is developing Mitt Romney's budget plan, basically. And I think that he's going as far as he can under the circumstances. I believe that Mitt Romney, if elected, is also going to accelerate that a lot. But I think he's going as far, perhaps, as he thinks he can politically at this time. Yes, sir?
Can you compare the United States with Rome?
Do I want to compare the United States to?
Well, how
Okay.
are we connected? I mean, our plans stay at home. What's that look like?
In terms of financial life, I think we've got this election. Okay, I mean, what's the timetable? I think we've got this election. I think we have to turn it around in this election. I think we have to. Because right now, trajectory is we're 5 years away from Greece right now. So you add 2 more years, and by the way, if Obamacare is implemented, it's going to be very, very difficult to roll back. I think we have to stop that from happening. A principled, courageous House of Representatives can stop Obamacare from being implemented, and that has to be priority 1.1. But that and the budget go together. But I think we've got this election, folks. If we don't turn it around in this election, I fear for my country now. But I don't think we can afford to lose. And I pick this up all over southern Minnesota. People see it the same way. And many people feel it's too late already. I don't. But many people feel it's already. So I think this is it, guys. I think this is where we fight the fight, and I think that Lincoln's words at Gettysburg fit us perfectly now. This is a test of whether a country conceived and born in liberty can long survive. Okay, that's my sense of it. Yes, ma'am.
What is your plan of action, or how would you put your plan into action to stop the fraudulent spending in the Medicaid program and the welfare program?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me just take Medicaid because that's what I've focused a lot of time on. And this is just so basic. I mean, this is like government 101 or less. We have to have audits of the program so that everything is available to the public. And I hate to say this, but in the state administration of Medicaid, there has never been a comprehensive audit that would really show how the system is being administered. So I'm a numbers guy, but you have to have numbers to look at. So objective number 1 is to have an audit. And I'm going to say that there's a very good chance prior to the election. By the way, there are 4 federal investigations of the Medicaid system in Minnesota taking place as we speak. Okay? There's a very good chance that at least one of these is going to be setting up an audit prior to the election. And that's, I mean, if you don't have things out in the open and transparent in government, you don't have anything.
That's number 1.
That's number 1. I'm the same way on the Fed, by the way, although I'm stronger on the Fed. So that's key. And I would say this is true just generally in government. Everything has to be open to the public. And I think that's true with the Federal Reserve. I think that's true with the tests that the Department of Education administers. By the way, I want you to know I think the Department of Education is unconstitutional. And when I swear to uphold the Constitution, I am swearing that I will do what I can to eliminate the U.S. Department of Education. I want you to know that. I'm a stickler on the Constitution. And one thing I will never do is I will never knowingly violate my oath to uphold and defend. Because the Constitution exists to protect our life, liberty, and property. Okay? That's what it's there for. And without that, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have anything. Okay? Question? Yes?
Well, you
Sir.
talked about the Obamacare and how bad it is.
Yeah.
But when I talk to a lot of people, you know, the big thing always keeps coming up is that, yeah, but Romney doesn't tell us anything. He's not coming out with any specific. And maybe it's time that they start coming out with something to give some people something to think about as to what kind of a change it's going to be. You don't have, they're not offering anything.
Well, there are 2 schools of thought on that. And the one is Romney and company should have an alternative that is out there and aggressively promoted. The other school of thought is, how long has it been since the Supreme Court has closed the door on the court throwing out Obamacare? It's really, it's not long. And some think we don't have time, and I say we, that includes Mitt Romney. We don't have time to develop an alternative and be able to develop clearly enough, carefully enough, well enough to be able to put it out there. And we're better off saying, let's replace Obamacare, and we're working on it. I want you to know I tend to be in the second category because I'm kind of a perfectionist, and when I have something out there, I want it to know it's rock solid, not half-baked. But there are those two schools of thought, and I think the Romney people are in the second. But go ahead.
The thought behind that, though, is a lot of people are saying, you know, we've been talking about this healthcare thing for years and years.
Right.
They ought to have something up there besides generalities.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's only a couple of the parts of it that they want to do that's much different, but they...
Yeah. Well, let me just mention to you some of my thinking, that this doesn't guarantee that Romney's going to pick it up, but if I'm asked what would you do, let me tell you what I would say, what I do say. Number one, you have to have the states get involved in reform of the laws that we know as tort reform. That is, we have to have better laws dealing with malpractice. And the biggest problem right now is the way, and let me just take Minnesota, the way the laws are written and the way the laws are interpreted essentially means if a doctor has a bad outcome, okay, you're going to pay malpractice. And just as an example, if a baby is delivered and if the baby isn't 100% healthy, or God forbid, is born dead, I mean, that's malpractice even though the medical community may have done everything perfectly. So we have to change the laws so that the courts are dealing with genuine malpractice, okay, and that's not where it's at now. There are some estimates, ladies and gentlemen, which I think are credible, that this whole area of malpractice is adding 20% to the cost of medical care in Minnesota. It's worse in some states than others. We're one of the worst. So that's one of the things that has to be done. But I want to clarify, this is state issue, not federal, and all I can do is advise. Because I don't believe the federal government should come in and tell the states what to do. Okay, but another thing states should do is have genuine competition between states. A third thing the state has to do, Minnesota has about 60 mandates that insurance companies have to include in their insurance to write the policy. Well, what if I don't want insurance that covers cosmetic surgery? What if I say it's too late for me? You know, just forget it. I cannot buy a policy in Minnesota that doesn't cover cosmetic surgery. All right? Let the buyer buy whatever they want. Open it up, make it free. The answer is to have a free system, a genuine free system. I mean, 60 mandates is ridiculous. I think you can also have tax incentives for high deductibles, because the higher the deductible, the more efficient your system is. I think you can have incentives for advertising for different procedures of different kinds. I mean, look at LASIK surgery, right? I mean, look at how the costs have come down on LASIK surgery. That same sort of thing could happen with other surgeries with some pretty major changes. So I'm convinced that there's a lot we could do.
Well, those are the things that people need to hear, but 90%
Yeah, I
of
believe
people
so.
don't.
I believe so. But let me also mention, I have put together 2 years ago and can activate anytime I want a group of medical doctors, insurance people, RNs, and so on, that are there to help me bring a proposal to DC on what we can do. One of the biggest mistakes that people run for office make is they think, well, I'm going to get elected and go to Washington and find what the answers are. Oh, brother, I assure you, the answers are not in Washington, D.C. They're not there. They're not there. The only way you have answers is you have people that are doing their jobs, whether that's as a medical doctor, as an RN, as an insurance person, whatever. People who are doing their job, who know what's happening, who know what works and what doesn't. And you have to have people in the field put together the solutions, and you have to bring them to Washington.